Hey, listen, if you're a business owner selling stuff to customers, you're gonna wanna hear this. Okay, so I've got a confession to make. I used to lose deals all the time because people said I was too expensive. I remember when this would happen, I remember feeling super defeated, like a total loser. And you know what? I'm really thankful that I had a strong mentor in my life. This mentor called me one time and he said to me point blank, he said, I know your problem. You suck at sales. Ouch. But you know what? He was right. And his name was Greg Gomez III. I now call him the Great Greg Gomez III. So Greg started to teach me sales and marketing, and he introduced me to some other great teachers. And here's one thing I learned as I went down the sales and marketing rabbit hole that I believe will serve you. So if you're losing deals because people say you're too expensive, here's how to fix that in about 90 seconds. First, I want to tell you what most business owners do wrong. Okay, so what most business owners will do is they will wait until someone says, that's too expensive. And then what will they do? They'll try to justify their price. They will get defensive. They will explain their value. And they will try to convince people. And as I learned, because I used to do all of that, as I learned, that's backwards thinking. In fact, if you're doing that now like I was, then you're already losing. You're dead in the water. So let me throw you a life raft. You want to handle the you're too expensive objection before it even forms. Here's how you do that. Before you ever talk to a customer, I want to encourage you to sit down and list every reason someone would choose your cheaper competitor. And I want to encourage you to be honest, write it all down. For example, you might write down things like, and these are things your customer would say, I can get the same thing for less money down the street. Or your customer might say, I don't see the difference. Why do you cost more? Or they might say, I'm worried that I'm going to get ripped off. Or they might say, I can't afford the premium. Have you ever heard any of those? Now, after you make your list for each one of them, I want to encourage you to ask yourself this. What happens when your prospects choose cheap? And let me point out, this isn't what you think, but this is what actually happens to them if they choose cheap. For example, you might write down the cheap version breaks in 3 months, or the cheap version requires them to spend more, replacing it 3 times. Or you might write down the cheap version doesn't have a warranty, so they're just out $800 when it fails. These are real consequences with real cost. Now, the next thing I want you to do is I want you to rewrite your messaging so that those realities that you just wrote down, they show up naturally. Okay? Not defensive, not salesy, just the truth. Now, here's what's going to happen when you do this. Your prospects and your customers are going to read your stuff, and they won't be thinking, this is too expensive. They'll be thinking, I definitely don't want to deal with that headache, right? And just like that, you're not competing on price anymore. In fact, you're now making price irrelevant. Let me give you a quick example. Let's say you're a chiropractor. Okay, someone says, what would a prospect say to a chiropractor? They might say, I can get adjusted for $29 down the street. So if you're a chiropractor, how do you respond to that? Well, you don't respond by saying, but I'm better. You don't try to convince. You don't try to justify your value. What you do is your website and your marketing materials should already say something like, the $29 adjustment feels good for a day. Then you're back, and you're back again. 6 months later, you've spent $300 and you're still in pain because nobody diagnosed the root cause. Well, what we do here at our chiropractic clinic is we do a full exam. We find what's actually wrong and we fix it once. Most patients are pain-free in 2 to 3 visits instead of 20. See the difference? That's how you fix losing deals. That difference, my friend, trust me, it's everything. Now you're no longer competing on price. Instead, your prospects are comparing outcomes. And guess what? When comparing outcomes, cheap loses. I hope that was helpful. And never forget, the strongest steel must go through the hottest fire. Deuces.